So my name's Helen, I'm 26 and I live in Birmingham, and I thought it might be useful to share a little bit about my chronic UTI journey. So I got my first UTI about this time last year, so July 2020. It was my first ever UTI, never had one before, and I had all the kind of classic symptoms. All I know is that I went to bed one night feeling absolutely fine, got up the next day, was just going to the loo every 20 minutes, felt really, really poorly, and felt really, really sick. So phoned the doctors, kind of recognised that it was a UTI, just the kind of classic symptoms, and got a prescription for 3 days of antibiotics, which I thought, great, cool, that'll clear it up. Didn't think anything of it. And that was on the Tuesday, and all I could think of at the time was that on the Friday I had a date with the guy who's now my boyfriend, and I thought, Helen, you've just got to get better for Friday. So I thought 3 days of antibiotics, get better for Friday, it's all good. And the antibiotics seemed to work, it seemed to settle down, and I just didn't think anything else of it really. And then about a month later, I felt the same symptoms kind of come back on, so having a lot of urinary urgency, and frequency, and feeling kind of really run down again. And I thought, well, this is a bit weird, I've only just had a UTI, I don't really get what's going on. So I had another 3 days of antibiotics and kind of seemed to clear up. And from that point forward, I was having really bad symptoms pretty much every week, and to some extent every day. So I was going to the toilet every 20 minutes, day and night. I had loads of pelvic pain, felt really, really run down, and just felt really, really rough. So when I had my first UTI, they didn't do a sample at the doctor's, they just prescribed me the antibiotics. So started doing samples, and they just kept coming back negative. And I was there literally almost every day. The reception lady would just recognise me and be like, "You've got another sample?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, here's my little pot." And yeah, they just kept coming back negative, and it was really, really hard because I knew that something wasn't right. But obviously the GPs didn't have anything to go on. They didn't have nothing was coming up on the results. So it got kind of more and more difficult. And it just kind of kept being undiagnosed, and they just kind of kept saying, and one doctor said, "Oh, this might just be something that you have to live with. It might just be sort of one of those things, it might kind of clear up in time, or you might live with it." And I just remember bursting into tears in the kitchen, being like, I cannot live like this. I am getting no sleep, I can't leave the house, I was so frightened, so frightened. And kind of turned to Dr. Google, see if there's anything there, and all that I could really find was the IC diagnosis that sort of fitted my symptoms, which is kind of a bit of a process of elimination. And on the NHS website it says how IC affects your work, it affects your relationships, it affects kind of so many things in your life. And I thought, I don't want that, that can't be me. And it was starting to really affect so many things, in September, we were kind of allowed to go a little bit more out and about, and I had cancel plans with friends, or say you're going to have to come somewhere near home so that I can go to the loo. And yeah, it was just awful. And I just didn't understand what happened. I've got no idea now what triggered my first UTI. And these kind of flares just kept coming so regularly, and they were just really debilitating. So obviously, in all bad situations, I was ringing my mum a lot, and she suggested getting in touch with a lady called Dr. Anderson, who's a chronic UTI specialist. So mum had done a bit of research, and I was actually recommended her by another friend as well, who has been a huge help to me, and she's a midwife, so she kind of knew a little bit about all this stuff. And so I thought, well, nothing to lose. So I sent them an email. They sent me out a sample kit, and I kind of waited for sort of my symptoms to kind of next surge, which didn't really take very long, and I sent off my sample, and waited for the appointment, had no idea what to expect, got the appointment, and Dr. Anderson said, "You have been so poorly, you've got a really bad UTI," and I just felt relief, almost, because I knew I had a UTI, but everything else kind of kept coming back negative, so you start to really doubt yourself. So she knew the bacteria, I could see from the samples, so I could get on the right antibiotics. And the appointment was just brilliant. I mean, it was there for like 2 hours, and like she was just amazing. She was so kind, really just everything that I needed to hear, everything that I've been doubting myself with. Like she just really said, like, you've been really poorly, like, you know, we've got to get this sorted. And she explained kind of the science around how UTI can become chronic when the bacteria get embedded into your bladder lining, and make a real happy home there, really. They produce what's called a biofilm, which makes them really hard to treat. And they just stay there and love life, and they just burst out every now and again and cause a real flare in symptoms. But actually, day to day, they're all kind of floating around, so you do have symptoms. So I started on 6 weeks of ciprofloxacin, and I responded really well to treatment. There were a few bits which I really didn't enjoy. So I used to be a really keen long distance runner, and with ciprofloxacin you can't really do any exercise because it can, one of the side effects is that it can damage your tendons, so you need to really take things easy. And actually what I had discovered over the kind of last few months was that exercise was a really big trigger for me, and it kind of still is now. I'm still not back at exercising anywhere near the level of what I was doing. Like, I was into long distance running, like HIIT workouts, anything that got your heart rate like really, really going, that was for me. So I found that really hard, but it's just one of those things you have to accept. And yeah, carried on the treatment. And so kind of where I am now, I suppose sort of 10 months later from kind of being on long-term treatment, so I still have kind of occasional flares, but I'm actually now off antibiotics and just on Hiprex and some different supplements like D-mannose, vitamin C, garlic oil, oregano oil, and all kinds of other bits and bobs, and taking probiotics as well. And actually that is, touch wood, keeping things pretty well at bay. I still have bad days, but I just kind of can up the D-mannose and take Hiprex 3 times a day instead of 2, and that really seems to work for me, which is really good. And I've now been off antibiotics for about 2 months, which is really, 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 really good. And I'm still really careful with like my diet, because fizzy drinks and alcohol kind of can be quite uncomfortable. So I think it's going to be a bit of a long road till I can kind of really start reintroducing things like that. Again, with exercise, I've found that I can do like yoga, and like Les Mills, who do loads of gym classes kind of across the country, do a class called Body Balance, which I kind of just get through like my online subscription, and I really, really enjoy that. That's like a mix of like core, yoga, Pilates, and it really, really enjoy it. So I miss long distance running, I miss cardio exercise, and losing that has been a big part of kind of discovering like who I am with this illness, and I grieve that every day, I really do, but I have faith that I will get there again. And actually, like, there's still, you know, great things I can do to look after my body in the meantime, and just got to make the best of what you can. So I'm really hopeful that I am kind of hopefully through the worst of it, and can kind of look forward to taking things day by day as well, is what I'm finding is really helpful. So I think kind of my message for those who have got a chronic UTI or have having UTIs that kind of aren't going away would be that you need to be your own health advocate, which is exhausting, but you know that something is wrong, you know that you're not feeling quite right, and you know that you've got to kind of, you've got to kind of really stand up for yourself and stand up for what you know that you're feeling. So I would just really encourage kind of that energy and that persistence to just keep going to get a diagnosis. And if you can see a chronic UTI specialist, then don't hesitate to do so. Like, Dr. Anderson is genuinely one of the most inspirational women I have ever met, and she's given me my quality of life back. It frightens me to think what I would be like now if it wasn't for her. I would definitely there's loads of information in the chronic UTI Facebook group and the files to get in contact with them, and another thing that I would really recommend is being really open with your family and friends and colleagues. So my UTI kind of started like over all of the lockdowns, and being in Birmingham, we were in like tier 3 and everything for ages, so it was quite easy to hide it, and because we were just at home. And it was only really for a very long time, it was just my parents, my flatmate, and my boyfriend who knew what was going on, because that was just easier. Because, you know, when you talk to people about it, people are like, oh, like, you know, did cranberry juice not help? And it's like, no, cranberry juice didn't help. Like, cranberry juice is rubbish. And you kind of feel like everybody else is just having 3 days of antibiotics and totally getting over it and being fine, and that you've failed somehow in that not being enough for you. But actually, like, when I started to tell my friends and family, it was just a real relief. You know, if they're your friends, then they will stick by you. And they, you know, my friends have been so patient, like, they cancel plans and, you know, like, oh, can we go somewhere that's got a toilet and all of this sort of stuff. Like, they've just been amazing. And work have been brilliant as well. I started a new job in April, and I told work kind of before I started in occupational health as well, and I had all of the information from Dr. Anderson, all the test results and things. And at the time I thought, oh, am I being a bit dramatic, you know, like, do I need to say anything? And actually a month in, I had a horrendous flare, and I'm so glad that I told them, because I needed a bit of time off work, and, you know, it didn't come as a surprise to them. They knew exactly what I was going through, and they were really, really understanding. So I would definitely kind of recommend just being really honest, being really open. You know, like, this illness is rubbish, like, it makes you feel horrendous, and, you know, your friends will want to help in whatever way they can, and whether that is, you know, like, you know, them coming to your house rather than you going to theirs so you can be close to the loo, like, they will do that because they're your friends and they love you. And kind of my other little tip that I would say is I found this really good app, which is just on like Google Play, called UTI Tracker, and it's kind of like a period tracker. And it's just a calendar, and each day you put in if it's a good day or a bad day, like what your symptoms were, how much you've drank, you know, if you've done any, had any triggers, so if you're on your period, if you've had sex, and you just log it on the app. And that's a really good way of seeing, like, when you've had good days, when you've had bad days, and actually you can then email that over to a doctor, and you've got that as a calendar then. And it's also a good way for identifying any triggers, so you can also put like exercise and food in there. So if you've had, you know, if you've had alcohol, if you've had any risky food for you, you can track that and then see what happens kind of afterwards. And I found that really, really useful for, you know, actually seeing the number of good days that I'm having as well. Like, sometimes when you feel you've got quite a bit of awareness, but actually it is, you know, a good day. I found that really good. And lastly, I'd say, like, don't give up. There are some amazing support groups out there, and there is some amazing science out there. And actually, if you have got a chronic UTI, like, you deserve good treatment, you deserve love, and, you know, you deserve to be happy. And, you know, there are ways of finding that within the darkness of this horrible illness. So yeah, I hope that that's helpful, and yeah, I hope that we all kind of find good treatment and, you know, better days ahead for all of us. So yeah, thanks so much.